Welcome back to the People of Penn State podcast. I'm Katie Farnham with the Alumni Association, and today I'm joined by Brett King, a 1981 graduate from the College of the Liberal Arts with a degree in speech communications. Brett has had a long career in the entertainment industry, including roles as a producer, creative consultant, DEI executive, and more. Brett, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here. Penn State has been incredibly kind to me the past couple of years, so very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. So we should start with your Penn State journey. Why did you choose to come to Penn State?
I'm from Pittsburgh. I was born in Pittsburgh. And my big brother, who is a bit older than me, went to Penn State. And so Penn State, when we traveled up to take him to Penn State University, it was literally like my first experience of any kind of college environment. And I was just blown away. I was blown away by the campus. I was blown away by all the people. The energy of the place was remarkable to me. So Penn State was always, and that was when I think the first time I was there, I was probably 8 years old. And so in my mind, Penn State was always the image of a university. You know, that's what I always when I pictured college in my mind, when I pictured the experience of college in my mind, I only imagined Penn State. And despite being recruited by a couple of, like by Harvard and by, I know Haverford University was like kind of interested in me, and a couple of other cool, prestigious places, I really never considered anywhere else other than Penn State. And in fact, only applied to Penn State. I was, when I got in, I was waitlisted for main campus. Like I got in, I don't know, for some satellite campus, and I did not accept that. I waited for main campus, and then I got into main campus. So I went to Penn State because it was my only image of what college was.
Well, we're so glad that you made that choice and came to Penn State, but can you tell us a little bit about your experience while you were here as a student?
Yes, Penn State was one of the greatest times of my life, for sure. It was a remarkable 4 years where I was able to truly explore my passions, where I was able to learn a great deal about myself. And I think one of the critically important things about Penn State is that because you are in State College, PA, that is in the direct center of the state, when you're at Penn State, you are only having the Penn State experience. My youngest daughter right now is finishing up her time. She's a senior at the New School in New York City. And her experience has been wonderful, and she's, replicated much of my time in New York. But it has been much less about the experience of the college and much more about the experience of New York City. Penn State allowed me to build, beautiful relationships with good friends that are friends of mine to this day. And again, really allowed me to explore my passions and dive into it a way that other university experiences, I don't believe, provide, because it is such a singularly unique university town. You are surrounded by thousands of people who are right around your age, right around your level of interest and academic curiosity. And it was a truly wonderful experience. Whenever I talk to kids who are going to college now, I remind them that this is a period of time, that one of the few periods in your life where you will be able to explore anything that interests you at the highest of levels. So while I was there, as I mentioned, or I think you mentioned, I was a speech communications major. And even though I was an undergrad, I was able to take graduate level courses as a senior. And one of the courses that I took there was a nonverbal communication course. I can't remember, SpeechComm 413 or something like that. And it was an unbelievable experience. It was super cool. It was very, very, very much a dive into what the meaning of nonverbal communication is. And I learned lessons in that class that I continue to utilize to this day. Lessons about how people communicate when they don't even know that they're communicating. So Penn State was really, it was a truly wonderful experience for me. It was a great dive into university life without the distractions of any other city life around you. So I think even going to, say, University of Pittsburgh or Carnegie Mellon University, those are places that are, great schools, but there's a lot more going around there than just school. And because Penn State allows you to truly immerse yourself in Penn State, it was a tremendous and remarkable time.
And after graduation, you moved to New York City and what you call your formative years. And, that can be kind of a big jump going from State College to New York City. So tell us a little bit about your journey once you got there.
Sure. So I had started going to New York. I met a woman at Penn State who I became romantically involved with, and then she moved to New York. And so I started going to New York as a junior, and I would go up, every few weekends or so and check out New York City and hang out with my girlfriend. And while falling in love with her, I also fell in love with the city. So the day after I graduated, I filled up a couple of suitcases and a couple of garbage bags of clothes, and with I think maybe $300 or $500 in my pocket, I moved to New York City. And it was certainly, obviously, a tremendously different experience than Penn State, but one that I felt would offer me some real opportunity to grow and to learn. In New York, I fell kind of very quickly into the emerging downtown art scene. I moved to New York in the early 80s. And so when I got there, this was literally the birth of hip hop, the birth of electronica, the birth of the video music scene. And I was immersed in all of those, particularly in the fine art world. So one of my first jobs was working on an experimental opera for television for Channel 4 in Great Britain, which was an experimental network at the time. And I met these remarkable artists and these fascinating people and dove really feet first very deep into the art world and into the emerging hip hop and graffiti scene. So my experience in New York was interesting. When I first moved to New York, my goal was to get into the television business. I had a sort of amorphous idea of what that meant, what the television business might be. And I didn't have any real connections in New York in that business. What ended up happening was I moved in with a friend of mine from Pittsburgh who was attending art school. And so all of his friends were artists. And so I started going to experimental art shows and experimental musical shows, and very quickly fell into the emerging hip hop scene and ran around with breakdancers like the Rocksteady Crew and Crazy Legs and rappers like Fab Five Freddy, and all those folks just became my circle. So I kind of diverted from my plan to enter the traditional television space, and again fell deep into the art world. So I had very unusual jobs where I was working for, a video art distributor that distributed video art to galleries, museums, and universities around the world. I worked at the Kitchen Center for the Arts as the assistant to the curators. The Kitchen Center for the Arts is the kitchen center for video, film, dance, and performance art. And so as the assistant to all of those curators, I got a deep dive into the world of new and experimental art and learned a great deal while I was there. And over time, I realized that unlike many of my contemporaries in the art world, I did not have a trust fund, nor did I have a enormous artistic ability. So I made the switch to straight production and moved from doing experimental video art into more traditional music videos. Those music videos, I started out as a PA and worked my way up the food chain until I was producing those music videos. And then from that experience, I was able to move into Saturday Night Live, and enter the big leagues of television in New York City after a few years in New York.
So tell us about that experience. Saturday Night Live is a big production. So what was that like to be a part of that team?
Saturday Night Live is an incredible, unbelievable institution. It was one of the best work experiences I ever had, and certainly one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had. It is challenging because you work incredibly hard and incredibly long hours, and you simply don't get to sleep while you're in production at Saturday Night Live. It is incredibly beneficial because you're working with some of the greatest minds in television, both at the beginning of their career and also as they are stars. So, I worked with Conan O'Brien and Greg Daniels and Bob Odenkirk when they were writers on the show. I worked with George Meyer, who became one of the executive producers of The Simpsons. I worked with just truly some of the greatest people, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. I was in the film unit. So the film unit would produce the commercial parodies that the show was known for. And we would also produce any kind of pre-shoots, anything that was necessary for the live show that would come up on Saturday. To give you an idea of the kind of hours that we would work, I was working on, so the way that Saturday Night Live works is it's a 6-day show. So people come in on Monday and they meet with a host on Monday. On Tuesday, the entire writing staff stays up all night long and writes all of the material for that show. On Wednesday, there's a table read. Thursday, sound check. Fridays, block and dress rehearsals. Saturday is the full dress rehearsal, and then the live show. All of that demands a great deal of time and attention and a lot of work. The show is, as it sounds, is put together on Wednesdays after the read-through. If things have gone well in the read-through, that piece is going to go into production. So to give you an idea of what it was like to work at Saturday Night Live, I was working on another project for Lorne, and I was in the thing that they don't do anymore, I think called a film to tape transfer. I was, transferring some film that we'd shot on film. I was transferring to the video so we could edit it. That process, that was a thing we were doing for the Rolling Stones. So Lorne Michaels produced a documentary about the Rolling Stones. I was one of the producers on that, so I was working on that. We were in this film to tape on Wednesday. Around 9 o'clock, we got a phone call that said, okay, that one script is going into production. The Wayne's World script is happening, and you guys have to pull the shoot together. Our host that week was Janet Jones, who was married to world famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky. And the sketch was a dream fantasy that that Wayne of Wayne's World had of a one-on-one hockey match with Wayne Gretzky for the hand of Janet Jones. So this is April. We get the word on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock that we have to do this shoot, that we have to deliver the product on Saturday. And so I get in on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning to start getting things together after working in the film to tape till around 10:30 or so. Get in at 8 o'clock to work, and I come home from work Saturday afternoon at 4, having slept for maybe 3 hours during that entire time. It took getting a ice skating rink. It took getting the hockey players in from Los Angeles. It took editing until 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday night. At one point on Friday, we realized that a musical cue that we needed, we did not have in our library, and we realized this at 2 in the morning. So at 2 in the morning, I took a car down, a town car down to my apartment in the East Village, picked up the album, Gary Wright's Dreamweaver, and brought that back so that we could have the Wayne's World effect of diddle-doo, 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 and play the song Dreamweaver. So my time there for this shoot started Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and ended at Saturday afternoon at 2.
I've always wondered how SNL can just kind of pull that off in, a week's time. So that makes a lot of sense that it was just nonstop, no sleep, get the job done. But also very impressive to have on your resume. You probably look back and you're like, I did that.
It is truly a machine. Again, you're working with the best of the best. So, the production designers, the music folks, everybody there is really, really, really the best. And when I was there, it was kind of the only game in town in New York. Like New York TV production really wasn't happening at all. So it was a really terrific experience.
So you mentioned LA a little bit ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you moved to LA after your time in New York. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
caused that change for you in that move?
So I was so after Saturday Night Live, I started my own production company, or the production arm of an existing commercial editing house, and I was again doing music videos, short films, documentaries, that kind of stuff. And just as that business was getting going, I got a call from Quincy Jones, actually from his people, to see if I would be interested in moving to Los Angeles to become a television executive for the new Quincy Jones productions. So Quincy Jones, obviously entertainment legend. At the time, he could not have been hotter. This was a couple of years after he had produced Thriller and then the follow-up to Thriller and so Bad. So just he could not have been a more a hotter producer in town. He was also producing The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air at the time. So I got a call from one of his executives. I met with that executive in New York, the Royalton Hotel. I remember on 44th Street. And as I walked down the street towards 6th Avenue, there's wild postings in New York. So you'll see whole walls that have just movie posters up or something like that. And right after this meeting about Quincy Jones, which was a great meeting, I walked down the street and there's like a whole line of wild postings just with the letter Q. And I'm like, okay, I got it. All right, great. So then they fly me out to meet with Quincy. And that is, of course, an incredible experience. He lived at the time in this incredible mansion in Los Angeles. And, you walk in and you're blinded by platinum records like everywhere in sight. And he is the most fascinating guy I had ever met. He was so great. We meet. We speak maybe about 15 minutes about film and television, and then for another hour and a half about hip hop and bebop and the relationship between the two, and how hip hop is going to change culture in ways that people can't even anticipate, and the future of television. I mean, the future of Black culture in this country. It was one of the most incredible moments I've ever had. And at the end of it, he gave me one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. We were saying goodbye. We're getting ready to head down to a taping of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where Naomi Campbell was guest starring. It's just not a bad day. And he took my hand in both hands, and he said, "It was a pleasure meeting you. You have a beautiful mind." And that was like I could just die off of that one. So Quincy brought me out here. And so I had started out in the art world, and then my second life was as a producer in New York. And then the third chapter was becoming a TV executive under Quincy Jones. So Quincy brought me out here, very, very quickly met, every network president in town, and was in development on very, very high profile content with very high profile folks. And it was possibly the best introduction I could have ever asked for to move into Los Angeles.
So can you explain the difference from moving from that producer role to the executive role and what those changes were like for you?
That's a great question. Yeah, so the difference between producing and executiving is huge. As a producer, your job is to gather and manage all of the creative elements necessary in order to make a piece of content. So let's say it's a commercial parody for Saturday Night Live, or better. So I produced this documentary after Saturday night. I produced this documentary called House of Trey, and it was a documentary on underground hip hop and house dancing. So as the producer, I did the budgets, I gathered the crew, I made sure that the locations that we had were cleared for locations. I had people sign releases so that we could utilize their stuff. I made arrangements. I hired the editors. I hired the editing facility. I negotiated all those deals. So producer is taking all of the massive amounts of stuff that have to be done and putting them into separate little bins that are able to be controlled and dealt with. An executive, there's primarily, I've been two kinds of executives in Los Angeles. I've been a development executive and I've been a current executive. These are both terms in the television industry. As a development executive, you take pitches from writers, you take pitches from actors, you take pitches from everybody, and if you agree that this is something that you can work with, you 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 work on building the story and assembling enough creative elements to set it up at a network, studio, or streamer. So you are working with the writer and giving them notes on scripts, talking about casting, talking about marketing, talking about potential targets for sale. All of those things are part of the executive function of being a producer. Of being an executive. As a current executive is much more like being a producer in that you are touching every element of the production. So as a current executive, so I was vice president of current at Paramount Television, I was VP of current or SVP of current at the WB, I was the head of original programming at BET. For all of those roles, what you are doing is working with the producers and making sure that they have everything that they need in order to deliver the show that you want to deliver. So as a current executive, you deal with, you are, if you are doing your job well, you are acting as an extra producer on the show because you get involved in breaking stories, in the breaking down those stories, in the giving notes on the final drafts of those stories, making sure that you have the budget is correct, that you can actually shoot the show, making sure that the right director is there to direct that episode, and then working with the network or the streamer to promote the show and work with advertising and marketing, etc. So if you're doing your job right, you are an advocate on behalf of the studio, or if you're working at a network or streamer, on behalf of the streamer, working with the producers. And when you are in your office at the network or at the studio that you're working, you are an advocate on behalf of that producer and that show that you're working on. It's an interesting, the biggest difference between being an executive and a producer is, the great thing about being a producer is you work very, 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 very hard, and then at the end you're done, and then you have this piece of content that you can show to your friends, and you're done. You can move on. As an executive, you're never done. There's just always more stuff to be done. So I could work 60 or 80 hours during the week, and then when I got back on Monday, there would still be a stack of stuff that I had to do, that I'd address on my desk. So as a producer, you're much more project based, and as a result, you can put that project behind you. As an executive, you are focusing on overall strategies, and you are always dealing with many, many, many things at the same time.
So you kind of saw all the angles of the production and the executive world of the entertainment industry. So you kind of went ahead and created your own production and consultation company. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I've been, I moved out here quite some time ago. And so I've been an executive, again, for quite some time. So my executive career spanned, I was first with Quincy Jones Entertainment, and then moved over to 20th Century Fox Television and worked on shows like The X-Files and Chicago Hope and some cool stuff over there. No, Supernatural was later. Then from Fox, I went to Paramount, and I was at Paramount for like 1,000 years. I was really at Paramount for a really, really good long time, and it was an unbelievable learning experience, because at that place they counted on their current department to truly act as another producer on the show. So I got to review budgets, and I worked very closely with marketing. I worked very closely. I oversaw all the deal negotiations. It was just a really, really, really great learning experience. From Paramount, I went to the WB till there was no more WB, and then from the WB I went to BET, and ultimately BET I was the head of original programming under Reggie Hudlin. So with all that experience, the first time I started my own production company was back then after BET. I started a production company that was a small digital production company, and I was a little bit ahead of the curve. I think that if we tried to launch this company today, we'd probably get some backing, but I was just ahead of the, we were just ahead of the game. So, so I had started this company. It was called 11th and B, after my beloved address in New York City. And we were doing digital content. We were doing some stuff for the Complex Media Network, small kind of digital productions. And that was not really cutting it in terms monetarily. And by this time I had built a family and had a wife and a couple of kids. The kids wanted to eat on a daily basis. They had no sense of personal sacrifice whatsoever. So I needed to get back into the studio world. So I put some feelers out, and I got a call from Sony Pictures Entertainment, who asked me to come over and create a director's program for them, which would be in the Department of Diversity and Inclusion. And so I became the head of the creative efforts of D&I for the studio for about 10 years or so. I was there for a good long time. And had great success there. We had a director's program where Barry Jenkins was in my first cohort. He's done okay for himself. And Sally Richardson Whitfield was just the first woman who, first Black woman to win a director's Emmy or be nominated for directing an hour-long show. A few folks from that cohort were just really remarkable individuals. So I launched my production consultation company. That's called Non-LP B-Side. For those who are too young to know, when they used to have records, they would release records. Some of the records that they would release would be on the back of a single release, and it wouldn't be found on the record. It was a non-LP B-side. And those were always the coolest tracks. I've been a DJ since the 80s. And so a coveted track has always been finding that golden non-LP B-side that is, the jamming track that people haven't heard. So I named my company after that because sometimes you have to look a little bit harder to find the good stuff. And I work with legacy media companies and with emerging tech companies and consult with those companies to help them bring stories to the screen that are commercially viable and globally relatable. So I work with a company called Ranked, that is a tech company that connects creators to brands and reduces the friction in that process. And in particular, works with creators from underrepresented communities and connecting them to big brands. And then I work with another company called Network in a Box that is a media operations company. And they do all the kind of background kind of stuff that is needed when you launch a FAST channel. FAST channels are free advertising supported streaming television channels. So if you look at Tubi or if you look at Pluto, those are made up of FAST channels. That's advertising supported streaming television. And there's a number of we are in the midst of launching several of those channels. So we're working with both creators and with brands to launch fast channels. And that's what I've been doing of late. Right now, as the fall season has just hit us, I'm looking to expand my consulting activities. So I'm reaching out to a whole bunch of folks to just see what kind of stuff that I can do with them as a consultant. When I was running diversity and inclusion at Sony, I would often bring on people like me to help execute a program or an initiative. So I'm looking to expand my activities in that and reaching out to do that with some folks right now. I also have my hands in a couple of traditional development things. I have a $6 million movie that I've been trying to push up the mountain for a little while. We have a couple of major pieces of talent that we're circling on that one. It sounds so Hollywood, this conversation. But anyway, it's a great script, great director, and now we need some talent so we can get some money for this thing. So there's that project that I'm working on. And then I'm also working on a project called Downtown that is set very much in my early days in New York. So when I was in New York, I used to run around with people who became world-renowned artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring and Futura 2000 and all those kind of folks. And one of my other friends at that time was Fab Five Freddy, who was not only a cultural tastemaker, but also a very good friend with Jean-Michel. So we're putting together a TV series that concentrates on the now legendary friendship between Fab Five Freddy and Jean-Michel Basquiat as they entered the art world from different directions and took over the world. So that's
some exciting things that we need to stay tuned for, Penn Staters that are listening. We have a lot to listen for. I'm excited to hear more.
It's been quite a this has been a crazy year. The reason I'm at this beautiful location in Laguna Niguel as opposed to my apartment in Los Angeles is that before the Los Angeles fires, I suffered a house fire at my place. So a couple of days before Christmas, I came home to a building that was, literally in flames.
Oh my goodness.
And I have been displaced since that time. So I was, insurance was putting me up for a little while here, and then they got kind of tired of that. And then I was couch surfing here and couch surfing, but now I'm with my sister. The repairs to my place should be completed within a month or so. And so I'll be back in Los Angeles at that time. But that has been the great thing that happened this year. Like really one of the greatest life achievements that I was able to do was I was able to return to Penn State just this year and deliver the commencement address for the class of 2025 College of Liberal Arts. It was an unbelievable moment and an incredible full circle minute in my life. It was great.
That was actually my next question, Brett, because you were here in 2024 in the spring, right? The College of Liberal Arts brought you back and you were named an outstanding alumni by the College of Liberal Arts. And then you came back again in 2025 in May to deliver the commencement speech. So what was it like to be asked for both of those things, to come back to Penn State and to get to be back here and kind of relive those days?
It was, it is hard to say how incredible, hard to really encapsulate how incredible it was. When I went back to campus last year to accept the Outstanding Alumni Award, I hadn't been to campus, since I was maybe like 26, 25, 26, something like that. So that was amazing. Coming to one of the producers that I worked with for many years at Paramount is Don Belisario. So coming to the Belisario building just made me giggle every time I walked by, and anytime anybody referred to the Belisario building, I just giggled. So that was funny. But it was truly an honor. And speaking to both the faculty members and particularly the students at the Paul Robeson Center, when I was able to address those students, was really inspiring. It was really terrific. And when I got the call from Dean Lang to return for the commencement address, first of all, it happened days after the fire at my place. So that in itself was fantastic. It was just great news. And then as the time approached, so it was very interesting. I get the call and they say, we'd like you to be the commencement speaker at the College of Arts. And I'm like, that's great. Yeah, sure. I'll absolutely do that. And then at one point, a little bit later, they said, yeah, you just have to speak about maybe 10 minutes, nope, certainly no more than 15. And I was like, man, I can do that tomorrow. You got like, I was like, I don't even have to think about this. This is like 10, 15 minutes. I can do that in my sleep. This is easy. And then maybe a month or two before the commencement address actually happened, I started looking at speeches on YouTube. And I was like, oh, I really have to say something here.
Surprise.
I have to give this some thought, actually, don't I? So I did put a little bit of thought into it, and I wrote a couple of drafts. I rehearsed one draft in front of my kids. I sent them a video, and I got some notes from them. So that was great. I have a 26 and a 22-year-old, and they were very helpful. And then coming back to do it, just the time was mind-boggling. So I get there on Thursday or Wednesday, and Thursday I have a private tour of the Parker Museum, the museum, which was like unbelievable and just wonderful and completely, I was able to flex my art knowledge and give stories about, a number of the artists that we were looking at, and that was really great fun. And then the next day, Dean Lang hosted a private reception for me at his home, with several of the faculty members. Then on Saturday, the commencement itself wasn't until 4 o'clock or something. I didn't have to be there till like 3 or something like that. So I had all morning to myself, and I decided to walk around campus and shoot some photos. I'm something of an iPhoneographer. I like taking pictures with my iPhone. And I'm on Old Main Lawn, where I had spent countless hours playing Frisbee, because when I was here, when I was at Penn State, I was a member of the highly enlightened Lords of the Valley Ultimate Frisbee team.
All right. You left that one out earlier.
And so we used to tour. I mean, it was a little bit less formal than it is now, to believe me. But we would, pile into a couple of cars and head down to Rutgers University and play. It was it was a huge part of my college experience. And so I'm there on Old Main Lawn. I had just finished taking a couple of great pictures, and I hear, "Hey, do you think we'll have some time to get a Frisbee game in before commencement?" And I'm like,
a sign.
Yeah. Can I get in on that, man? Can I get on that? So I ended
Little
up
did
playing...
they know.
So I ended up playing Frisbee with a past member of the Frisbee team and a current member of the Frisbee team, brother and sister team. And that was just the most full circle moment it could have possibly been. It was absolutely fantastic. And then, we went and got all dressed up and delivered the commencement address. And the commencement address has been very well received, and it was really, really, really fun. And the entire event actually has really inspired me. So one of the things that I'm really exploring right now is returning to academia. So I've been meeting with some folks at USC. I'm meeting with some folks at AFI, American Film Institute. And I would love to interact with the next generation now at this unbelievably crucial time in history, and a transformative time in media. And I'd love to work with the folks that are on deck. So Penn State has really, really inspired me to truly explore that part of my life. And that's something, the next time we talk, I'm confident I will be telling you about my university instructor role.
All right, I look forward to it. We need the update.
There you go.
All right, Brett. Well, we like to wrap things up with a little lightning round of some Penn State related questions. So while we're on the Penn State train, let's get started. Are you ready?
Okay. I don't know. We'll try. Let's see.
Your favorite creamery flavor?
Chocolate mint.
Okay. Your favorite Penn State sport? Which one are you buying tickets for first when you're back in town?
Ultimate Frisbee.
Duh.
Although I am going to, so Penn State's coming out to Los Angeles.
Yes.
So I will be attending the UCLA game with Dean Lang, who's been kind enough to invite me. And I get to bring my big brother, also Penn State alum, who played for the Nittany Lions when he was at school.
Amazing.
So the full circle moments will continue.
Your favorite class and or professor while you were a student?
I think probably my favorite class is one I mentioned earlier, the nonverbal communication class. It was really innovative. It was very, very interesting. As I said, I took lessons from that class that I utilize daily in interactions with colleagues. And it was a really smart and innovative class. We did, we were shooting on film and shooting events and then playing those back in hyper slow motion. It was a really cool and interesting, smart class. So that would be it. Nonverbal communication.
Your favorite local restaurant in State College? It can be one that was here when you were a student or one that you discovered when you were back visiting.
Wow. I got to say the Corner Room.
Good choice.
And that they also now have a great area upstairs that I went to when I was there last year. And oh my goodness, there was some food. They have these little bread things that I still dream about. I mean, it was a really, really, really good culinary experience.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really fun conversation, a lot of talk about entertainment and the entertainment industry, and we're excited to see what comes next for our next conversation.
We got good stuff happening, good stuff in the hopper, and good stuff. Thank you very much for the time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you to Brett for joining us today, and to our listeners, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Special thanks to our guest relations coordinator, Abrielle Clark, and our graphic designer, Gabrielle Harris, for their work on this episode. If you're interested in more stories about our alumni and the fun things that they're doing in this world, you can check out the Penn Stater magazine. And if you are looking for more information on the Alumni Association, visit alumni.psu.edu. We are.